Once upon a time, there was a village by a big, wide and flowing river. Wide and flowing, just like the Pacali River. But after months and months and months of no rain, the river had shrunk down to a little stream. The crops that were growing so tall and strong had begun to shrivel up and die. And the cows that were the fattest in the whole of Cox's Bazar were now getting very, very thin. The villagers, instead of sharing the small bits of food that they had, would hide whatever they had in their houses. And when other people, their neighbors, came knocking on their doors, asking to borrow something, they'd say, "Look, we've got nothing to share," and close the door. Does it sound like it was a happy village? No, it wasn't. And over time, the villagers started to fight more and more with each other until there came a time when nobody was speaking to each other. Well, around that time, an old woman, a stranger to the village, came and she crossed that small stream. She was carrying something on her head and something on her back, and she was humming a tune as she walked. She came right into the center of the village, and she put down the pot from her head, and she took the cloth sack from her back. Do you think the villagers came running out to greet her and welcome her with a nice cup of chai to drink or something to eat? No, they didn't. They all went into their houses. They closed the doors, they closed the windows, and they peeped out at her. "What does she want from us? We don't have anything to share with her. Who is she?" they said. Well, the old woman went down to the stream, collected some water, and put it into her pot. She collected a few pieces of firewood, and she built a fire under the pot, lit it, and soon the water was bubbling in the pot. Then she took the cloth sack and opened it, and inside it was a big round stone, and she put it in the pot and started to stir. Well, there was one little girl who'd been watching from the window, and she was so curious. What is she making? And also, she was very hungry. So she ran out and she said to the grandma, "Grandma, what are you making in your pot?" The grandma said, "I'm making stone soup. It's the most delicious soup in the whole world. But if only I had an onion, then it would be perfect." Well, the little girl remembered that morning when she tried to put on her shoe, it had got stuck. And when she looked inside her shoe, there was an onion hidden in there. So she ran home to get the onion, and she brought it back to the old woman, and they put it in the pot. And when they put it in the pot, the old woman sang, and the little girl, you guys, sang after her. "Baba la gumba la have say. Baba la gumba la have say. Ha na 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 have say. Ha na 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 have say. Have When the other children in the village heard the singing and started to smell the soup, they also came and gathered around the pot. Grandma, what are you making in your pot? I'm making stone soup, said the grandma. It's the most delicious soup in the whole world. But if only I had a little bit of salt and maybe some chili, then it would be perfect. Well, there was one boy who remembered he hadn't slept well in the night. There'd been something scratching him under the bed mat. And when he looked under it in the morning, there was salt hidden under there. And another girl, she wondered why her clothes were making her all tingly, her skin all tingly. And when she reached in, she found a chili hidden there. So they ran home to get the ingredients and came back and they put it in the pot. And when the old woman sang, afterwards the children sang. Baba la gumba la havise. Baba la gumba la havise. Ha na 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 havise. Ha na 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 havise. 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 Well, then all the villagers had gathered around the pot. They'd started to smell the delicious stone soup cooking. And soon, one of the adults remembered, I've got a tomato at home. And they went and got a tomato. And another adult remembered, I've got a piece of fish. And they brought the piece of fish. And soon all the adults were bringing different things. What did they bring? You tell me. Yes, they brought that and put it in the soup. What else? Yes, they brought that and they put it in the soup. And soon the soup was bubbling all up. And together the whole village and the old woman sung the song. Baba la gumba la havise. Baba la gumba la havise. Ha na 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 havise. Ha na 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 havise. 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 It was really the most delicious soup in the whole world. They had never tasted something so sweet. And after they'd finished eating the soup, someone remembered an old song that they used to love to sing. And then another person remembered a song. And then one old grandpa started to tell a story. And another story. And another story. And soon the moon was high in the sky. And all the children were fast asleep when the villagers decided to say good night to each other. Good night, neighbor. Good night. Sleep well. And they went home and they slept the sweetest, most peaceful sleep. In the morning, they woke up to hear this sound on the roof. Do it with me. Yeah? Let's do it together. finger. 2 fingers. 3 fingers. 4 fingers. 5 fingers. What do you think it was? That's right! It was the rain! Hooray! The rain had returned. The villagers came rushing out of their houses and they danced in the rains and they jumped in the puddles. They splashed each other. They were so happy. And when they looked around for the old woman, they realized she was gone. But even though the old woman had gone, the gifts that she had given to that village stayed with that village forever. The river grew back to a wide flowing river. The crops grew back and the cows grew fat again. And the village was together and united again. And that is the end of the story. So, some questions. What was your favorite part of the story? Yes, I love that part too. Who was they? What were the ingredients that they put in the soup? Do you remember? This is a head question. What were the ingredients that they put in the soup? Yes, they put onion, they put salt, they put chili, a tomato, a bit of fish. Yeah? What else do you remember? Another head question. Hand question. Another hand question. What was the sound they heard on the roof the morning after they made the stone soup? What was the sound? That's right, it was the rain that had come back. Another hand question. Who was it who was the first person to go to speak to the old woman? That's right, it was the little girl. So now, a head question. Why do you think that the villagers were fighting? Yeah. What could the villagers do in future to be a happier village? A heart question. Who do you think was the bravest person in the whole story? Who was the hero of the story? Really? Okay. How did you feel when the old woman came into the village and nobody greeted her? How do you think the old woman felt? How do you think the children felt when they saw the adults in the village telling stories and singing songs around the fire? There's so many questions I could ask. But I'm going to leave it there. That is the story of Stone Soup.